past couple of weeks, I've been shooting the Sony 35mm G Master pretty much everywhere. At home in Pembrokeshire, a quick run to Snowdonia, and then a few very intense days in Venice where I shot a lot of photos and got some very good light. This video is part of a series, The Art of G Master, where I explore how these lenses behave in the real world and why they feel the way they do when you're actually shooting them. The 35mm felt like the best lens to start with because it sits right between intimate and immersive, what I might consider my 24 and 50 to be, which I've mentioned many times previously. After living with it for the past couple of weeks and shooting it in a number of different scenarios, I've really come to understand why many photographers call 35mm their desert island lens, or if they could only shoot one focal length for life, that they might pick 35mm. I think I might be one of those photographers. We're gonna jump right back to the office shortly, but I wanna cut to a video that I shot at the end of the Venice trip after 4 days of non-stop shooting this lens with golden hours back to back every single day, over 80,000 steps and many, many, many photos. It truly was probably one of the best trips I've had for providing me with an environment to really test both myself and the lens. I'm still on a little bit of a high from it, to be honest. So let's cut to a clip of me reflecting just on the experience there and then, and we'll be back here in just a moment. That wraps up 3 days shooting in Venice, primarily shooting the Sony 35 G Master. It's been great, over 80,000 steps, a few thousand photos. I don't know how many exactly at this stage. Very much looking forward to going through them and sharing some of the better ones with you guys, not sharing some of the not so better ones. The lens, let's talk about the lens. So it sits in between my two most used lenses, the 24mm and 50mm, and it does kind of what both of those lenses do in a unique way. It feels like the most versatile single focal length, and it's definitely a lens that's going to be staying in my bag. This has been essential. Whilst it's been amazing to be out here in Venice shooting, the primary task for me was to shoot the 35mm lens, get used to it and feel it out in a place that's new to me, exciting, and offers so many things to photograph, to test its versatility. And it's essentially just worked for everything I've pointed it at, from super tight alleyways to wide open squares, rooftops, across the water here, from boats, shooting boats from land. It just feels like it's capable of doing so many things. I can't wait to use it more. However, right now, we have to rush to the airport, so I'll see you at home. You hear and read lots of comments if you're anything like me, watching videos, reading threads and posts and whatnot about lenses. Many of them praise the sharpness, the detail, the clarity, the contrast, and many praise character, which is a little more difficult to describe. It's more something you can see and feel when you look at photos from a lens. The thing I appreciate most about the G Master lineup is that it strikes a balance between the two, especially for me and my own style of photography. There's a lot of engineering behind the lenses, and this is instantly obvious, but this isn't the only thing that matters. What also matters is how they hold up creatively. Something that matters to me massively with my lenses as well is consistency across the different focal lengths. With G Master lenses, I just feel like I've changed the focal length. I still get both the technical element, super fast autofocused, great contrast, saturation, colors, all the tech side of things that matter, but also this consistent character and colors that I'm able to reproduce with each of the lenses that I use. Whilst I will give mention to some of the technical details, maybe punch in on some photos so you can see them in this video also, this series is going to focus more on the artistic and creative side that you can produce with these lenses, expanding on why 35mm and why 35mm for this first video. So many years ago, I tried to use a 35mm prime lens and I just didn't click with it. It was not long after the nifty 50, the first 50mm lens I had, where subject isolation and center framing and shallow depth is kind of what you might gravitate towards as you first start shooting, and it makes photography a little bit easier, but sometimes that can be a little bit less rewarding. When I first used a 35mm lens, I just couldn't click with it. It felt wider than I was used to. I think that's the main way to summarize it, and I was still trying to shoot it the same way that I shot my 50mm lens. However, I've used the 24mm and 50mm as my most used lenses now for 3+ years. And whilst my favorite way to do photography has been to use these two prime lenses, I have been curious about a one lens option that would get as close to what I'm used to, and it just made sense to use a 35mm lens again. Firstly, it makes sense on paper. It's somewhere near enough right in between 24 and 50 millimeters. So I wanted to see if I could use it in different environments and if it would tick this one lens box for me. Now I've shot the Sony 40mm G lens for quite some time as well, and this is what got me going in this direction, but that didn't feel in between 24 and 50, it felt closer to 50. So the question I asked myself is, will the 35mm bridge the gap between my two lenses? I've now shot the lens for a couple of weeks, and honestly, I think just based on my years of experience with 24 and 50, my eye felt somewhat trained for 35 already, and it even surpassed my expectations and felt so natural to me so quickly. The lens is wide enough to give you context and a scene, but also tight enough to give you an obvious subject and story. I've used the lens for landscapes, on the coast, street moments in Venice, quick portraits of people I've passed by, small scenes, and even through the tough weather back home. It just adapts, or it feels like it does, wherever you are, whatever you're shooting, it keeps the pace with how you see the real world. These might be your first thoughts about a zoom lens versus a prime. However, this prime lens sits in a space where it can compete both ways. It's faster, so it can shoot in low light with an f1.4 aperture, and it's super versatile without you needing to zoom. You can just move your feet, which is also the way I prefer to make photos. What I look for most in a lens is how it feels to use, not just how it performs on paper. Sharpness, contrast, color, all of that matters, only because you forget about the technical side and focus on what's happening in front of you. This is the photography experience that I love the most. The 35G Master seems to offer this to me as soon as I attached it to my camera. Whether it's shooting the canals at golden hour, boats passing by underneath bridges, moments of people in the streets, quiet scenes back home, the lens always felt natural to me and true to life. It doesn't just show what something looked like, it helps you capture it, how it felt to be there. This has been a huge part of my photography, and this lens I feel is now an additional tool that I can use to tell better stories in different environments with a consistent look. It's a focal length that rewards you for being intentional about your distance from your subject, something I've practiced over and over again with other lenses at other fixed focal lengths. Again, something that makes me prefer primes over zooms. This skill is something you can practice and improve with every prime lens you use, and over time get better and better and better at knowing the frame before you look through the camera. Something you can do to get a feel for how the 35mm lens performs, or any prime lens in a sense, something I've always done, is take the first shot from the first instinctive place that you just feel where you'll take the shot normally. This might be for people who use zoom lens, the point where they kind of stop and zoom in or out to take the scene. What I'd suggest you do is shoot the first shot, then either take 2 steps forward, maybe 3, or backwards, and you'll get a different perspective. And then when you review these photos afterwards, it'll help you gauge how close you want to be to the first subjects within the scene. Or if the frames are too busy, you can step forward to close down on things a little, and the opposite if you find that you want to include more things into the scene. Each photo, of course, requires interpretation and decision making from behind the camera. However, I do find a tendency to prefer landscape orientation the wider I go with lenses. This doesn't mean to say I won't shoot a portrait frame with my 14mm lens. Typically that would have a very vertical subject that you want to frame in such a way. But as I get wider than 50, I'm often more inclined to shoot landscape. Just for my preference. I find that this look just suits the scene a little bit more, and I have a tendency to want to center subject frames that are shot in portrait mode at 35, 24, and even wider. Again, this is mostly personal preference, but I still see it in other people's photos as well. Again, that's personal preference. Because, as mentioned, I really like to pair certain focal lengths with other focal lengths for a complementary look, scene and subject, often. I did shoot a fair amount of photos with my 70-200 in Venice also. I'll share a few of these side by side with 35mm shots for your reference. I do feel like an 85mm or 135mm prime might make an excellent pairing to the 35mm also. I've just switched over to the 50mm G Master f1.2, my long-time favourite lens. However, this comes very, very close. It's more versatile, I have to admit that. If I couldn't pair that 50 with this 24, it wouldn't be the same. And this is kind of both of these lenses in one, to an extent, genuinely. I may end up just packing them all now. I said I wouldn't get too technical in this video, but here are some of the specifications about the lens for your information. Now, I mostly shot the lens with the A7R5, which is filming me right now. And that's because I just wanted to have the best tools that I have at my disposal, the EVF, better LCD, all of those things. However, this setup right here, I think needs a mention. The A7CR and 35G Master. I think this as a daily camera setup rivals any other option. I also think that it's my main or second camera when I'm shooting a job, and the fact that it can be both and be this small still, that's 61 megapixels, full frame, 35mm full frame again, obviously, f1.4 in this size and weight. Maybe I'll add the weight if I can figure that out as well, is just phenomenal. I don't think that anyone else can touch this, and that's the reason I choose to shoot it. So, where to wrap up with this video, I'm going to get out and shoot some more photos with the 35G Master, and I'm going to look forward to shooting another G Master lens soon.